Have you ever been in a crowd so loud you could feel the sound vibrating in your chest, only for it to go silent in a single heartbeat? That's exactly what happened the night Michael Jackson brought an entire stadium of 50,000 fans to a dead stop. 1 second the music was pounding, lights flashing, everyone screaming. The next? Total, pin-drop silence. And it all happened because of a 7-year-old boy who was fighting for his life just a few feet from the stage. Now, I know you've probably heard wild stories about Michael's concerts, epic dance moves, mind-blowing stage effects, fans fainting left and right. But this wasn't one of those over-the-top moments. This was something no one expected, not the band, not the crew, not even the crowd that had waited hours to see the king of pop moonwalk across that stage. Picture it, 50,000 people jammed into a massive stadium that felt more like a small city than a concert venue. The energy? Off the charts. Everyone was there for the spectacle, pyrotechnics, the legendary set list, that voice that could make an arena lose its mind. But hidden in the front rows was a little boy facing a battle far bigger than any of us could see. And in a moment that still gives me chills, Michael spotted the commotion and did something no one, not even his closest crew, saw coming. I'm going to take you inside that night, moment by moment, how a superstar in the middle of one of the biggest tours on the planet suddenly stopped everything to help a child he'd never met. We're talking about 50,000 people watching as the lights cut, the band froze, and Michael raised a single hand to the crowd. It was the kind of raw, unplanned drama no special effect could ever match. Stick with me, because by the end of this story you'll see a side of Michael Jackson that rarely made the headlines, a man whose compassion could command a stadium as powerfully as any hit song. You'll hear what he said into the microphone, how the audience reacted, and what happened to that boy after the lights went down. This isn't just another concert anecdote, it's a reminder of how one human being's choice can ripple through thousands of others in a single instant. So let's rewind to that electrifying night and relive the moment the music stopped and 50,000 hearts listened. Let's roll the clock back a little and picture that night before anything unexpected happened. We're in a massive outdoor stadium, think a concrete bowl big enough to hold an entire small city, packed with 50,000 people. It's late summer, the kind of warm evening where the air buzzes with excitement long before the first note plays. Fans had been lining up since morning, some camping overnight just to claim a spot close to the stage. Everywhere you look there are glittering gloves, homemade King of Pop banners, and parents holding kids on their shoulders so they can catch a glimpse of history. The show was part of Michael Jackson's legendary History World Tour, a production so huge it needed fleets of trucks just to move the stage gear. Imagine giant video screens stretching stories high, pyrotechnics primed to blast skyward, and a sound system powerful enough to make your ribcage hum. Before Michael even stepped on stage, the energy inside that stadium felt alive, like a single, massive heartbeat shared by 50,000 strangers. I still get goosebumps thinking about the moment the lights finally dimmed. A slow, low rumble rolled across the crowd as if the whole place was taking a deep breath together. Then came the opening blast of music, booming drums, sharp guitar riffs, and the crowd just exploded. People were screaming, jumping, waving glow sticks. It wasn't just a concert, it felt like the world's biggest celebration. Michael emerged in a flash of light wearing one of his signature military-style jackets, and you could literally hear the sound of thousands of cameras clicking in unison. He launched straight into a string of hits, Billie Jean, Beat It, songs that had defined a generation, and every single person seemed to know every word. From where I stood, it looked like a giant ocean of people moving in perfect rhythm. Even if you weren't a diehard MJ fan, you couldn't help but get swept up in that atmosphere. The stage lights sliced through the night sky like lightning bolts. The bass from the speakers rattled the metal railings. At one point I glanced around and thought, this is what pure excitement looks like. For most of us in that crowd, the night felt perfect, like nothing could possibly interrupt it. But somewhere down near the barricade, amid all that joy and sound and motion, a small boy was quietly fighting a battle none of us could see. And in just a few songs' time, that hidden struggle would collide with the biggest show on earth and change the night forever. Down near the front barricade, just a few steps from the stage, was a little boy whose night was about to take a dramatic turn. For privacy, let's call him Daniel, though reports about his real name were never fully confirmed. Daniel was only 7 years old, small enough that the massive crowd around him must have felt like a moving forest of adults. He wasn't just any kid out for a fun concert. Daniel was living with a serious heart condition that doctors had been monitoring since birth, a condition that made something as ordinary as excitement or loud noise a potential risk. His parents had told friends that seeing Michael Jackson perform was Daniel's dream. He'd grown up watching VHS tapes of music videos, memorizing every spin and kick. They'd saved for months to bring him there, hoping the experience would give him something to smile about during a long stretch of hospital visits and treatments. From what we know through scattered interviews and fan forum recollections, the family had coordinated with medical staff to make the night as safe as possible, bringing medication, keeping him hydrated, and finding a spot near the front where security could help if needed. Imagine being 7, finally standing close enough to see your hero moonwalk across the stage. The thundering bass, the flashing lights, the sound of 50,000 voices singing along, it must have felt like stepping inside a dream. But that dream carried a risk. Pediatric cardiologists explain that for children with congenital heart issues, sudden spikes in adrenaline or heat can trigger dangerous rhythms in the heart. According to the American Heart Association, arrhythmias in young patients can become critical in minutes if not treated. At first, Daniel seemed to be holding up well. People nearby later recalled a small boy on his dad's shoulders, eyes wide with excitement. But as the set wore on, the combination of heat, noise, and sheer emotion began to overwhelm him. A sharp dizziness hit, his breathing quickened, and he slumped against his father. His mother waved frantically, trying to get the attention of security as the crowd around them kept dancing, most completely unaware that a medical crisis was unfolding right there in the front row. While tens of thousands of fans focused on the stage, a quiet alarm was growing in that tiny pocket of the audience. And somehow, maybe it was the commotion, maybe a sixth sense, Michael Jackson would soon notice. The king of pop, mid-performance, was about to turn his attention from a sea of screaming fans to one fragile child, and everything about that night was about to change. The show was rolling like a freight train, blazing lights, pounding bass, and Michael halfway through another crowd favorite when, all at once, something shifted near the barricade. From my spot a few sections back I saw a quick ripple, almost like a wave of people leaning the wrong way. At first I thought it was just fans jockeying for a better view, but then I noticed the frantic arm movements, security waving, apparent signaling, faces turning from excitement to worry. Right there in the middle of a perfectly timed routine, Michael glanced toward the commotion. You know how some performers barely break character no matter what? Not him. His head snapped to the side, eyes narrowing as he caught sight of the small cluster of people pushing toward the front rail. The music thundered for another beat or two, but you could see the calculation in his face, something wasn't right. Then it happened, he raised one gloved hand high and gave a sharp, unmistakable signal. The band, trained to follow his every cue, cut off instantly. Drums, guitars, everything, dead silent. Imagine 50,000 people mid-cheer suddenly hearing nothing but their own breath. That kind of silence is heavy, it lands on you. Michael stepped to the edge of the stage, pointing toward the spot where Daniel's parents were trying to flag help. Hold on, stop, he said into the mic, his voice firm but calm. No theatrics, no panic. Just a clear command that everyone somehow heard even without the booming speakers. Security guards and medics appeared from the sides, parting the crowd like a fast-moving tide. I remember how surreal it felt. Just seconds earlier the entire stadium was one giant, moving, singing organism. Now it was as if time slowed. You could hear people whispering, a few calling out prayers in different languages. Some fans near me clasped hands, instinctively forming a quiet circle of support for a child they'd never met. Down front, Daniel's father carefully lifted him so medics could reach over the barricade. From a distance I could see the boy's small arms hanging limp as a paramedic checked his pulse. His mother kept one hand on his chest, eyes locked on the medic's every move. Michael never took his eyes off the scene. He knelt on the edge of the stage, microphone lowered, lips moving in what looked like a silent prayer. For a man used to controlling every second of a show, he gave up the spotlight without hesitation, letting the only story be the one happening in the crowd. In that breathless hush, with 50,000 hearts waiting, everyone understood, the concert could wait. A child's life came first. The stadium was so quiet you could almost hear the flutter of the big video screens. Michael stayed at the edge of the stage, one knee bent, eyes locked on the small circle of medics around Daniel. For a moment it felt like he'd stepped out of the role of global superstar and into the role of a neighbor who just happened to have 50,000 people watching. He slowly lifted the microphone back to his lips, but his voice wasn't the showman's voice we'd heard all night. It was softer, steadier. "Please, give them space," he said, gesturing with his gloved hand for the crowd to stay calm. The words carried through the sound system like a personal request, and somehow every person in that giant stadium obeyed. People who had been shoulder to shoulder a minute earlier shuffled back, creating a pocket of air around the medics. Michael motioned toward the security team, and more staff members appeared with water bottles and a stretcher. "Take your time," he added, speaking directly to the paramedics but loud enough for us all to hear. There was no sense of hurry in his tone, just a quiet authority that said, "This matters more than the music." Then he did something I'll never forget. He sat down cross-legged on the edge of the stage, microphone resting in his lap, simply waiting. The man famous for never standing still during a show didn't move. He just watched, hands clasped, eyes following every action of the rescue team. A few nearby fans started a gentle chant, "Daniel, Daniel," and Michael glanced their way, nodded once, and whispered into the mic, "Let's all send him our love." It wasn't dramatic or showy. It was human. The entire stadium seemed to take a collective breath. Some fans closed their eyes, others raised their hands as if sending invisible waves of support. From somewhere behind me a soft hum of "Heal the World" began, and soon hundreds joined in. Michael stayed silent, letting the audience carry that moment. When the paramedics finally lifted Daniel onto the stretcher, Michael stood and stepped forward, giving a small bow of thanks to the crowd and to the medical team. "You're in our prayers, little one," he said, voice barely above a whisper but somehow echoing across the speakers. He waited until the boy was safely through the tunnel before turning back to us. Only then did he speak again, gently, "Life is the most important thing. Thank you for your kindness." The words hung in the air like a benediction. For those few minutes, the king of pop wasn't an untouchable icon, he was simply Michael, reminding 50,000 people what truly matters. When the stretcher finally disappeared into the tunnel, the stadium felt like it was holding its breath. Imagine 50,000 people standing shoulder to shoulder, the usual buzz of a concert replaced by a hush so deep you could hear the faint rustle of jackets and the distant hum of the stadium lights. It wasn't the nervous silence of confusion anymore, it was something heavier, almost sacred. The people closest to the barricade stayed perfectly still, eyes fixed on the path the medics had taken. Further back, fans began to link hands. I saw strangers, people who just moments earlier had been jostling for space, turn to each other with quiet words of comfort. A man beside me whispered a short prayer, a woman in front of us wiped her eyes with the corner of a sequined MJ scarf. It was as if the entire crowd, from the VIP seats to the very last row of the upper deck, had suddenly become one family. And then, almost organically, a soft melody floated up from somewhere in the lower stands. At first it was just a handful of voices, but I recognized the tune immediately, "Heal the World." Within seconds hundreds joined in, then thousands, until the whole stadium was singing. No band, no backing track, just 50,000 voices carrying a song Michael himself had written about love and care for children. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, rising into the night air like a single, enormous prayer. Michael stood center stage, head bowed, letting the chorus wash over him. He didn't try to lead or add a dramatic gesture, he simply let the moment belong to everyone. That choice somehow made it even more powerful. You could feel the music vibrating through the seats, but it wasn't the thumping bass from earlier, it was the resonance of human voices, perfectly imperfect and completely united. I glanced around and saw people with their phone flashlights raised, tiny pinpricks of light that turned the stadium into a field of stars. Security guards who had been directing traffic now stood still, eyes glistening. Even the camera operators, usually glued to their work, had paused to take in the scene. When the last notes faded, the silence returned, deeper than before. And then came the applause, soft at first, like raindrops, then swelling into a warm, rolling wave that seemed to say we're all in this together. It wasn't the usual roar for an encore, it was a collective heartbeat of empathy. That night, 50,000 strangers didn't just witness a concert. They became a community, united not by a pop hit or a dance move, but by a shared moment of compassion. And in that togetherness, you could feel exactly why Michael had stopped the music in the first place.